Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
So I would like to mention before we actually get into the Seder of the week. So in preparation for the next major holiday, quote, which is Tisha B'Av, I started to read Midrash Rabbah on Eicha. And I have to say that I'm using the Art Scroll. Art Scroll has come through with an incredible translation and interpretation of so much that is foundational and really been inaccessible to the English-speaking public for a long, long time. So I started to read Midrash Eicha again. That's a whole Midrash on the Book of Lamentations, which of course is the scroll we read. And right at the very beginning, there's a whole section called the Petichta, which introduces the book and basically deals with this whole question of Eicha, which means how did it happen? And so in answering that question, one of the things they say is that it was essentially a neglect of Torah that caused this whole tragedy of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem to happen. And then they go into more detail as to what they mean by that. And interestingly enough, they come up with an explanation that I think most of us would never guess. And they say because they didn't say the bracha for studying the Torah. So why should it be so important to say the bracha we just said? The fact that they omitted it, what's the big deal, right? And so there's some discussion about what the big deal is. And the issue is that when we make a bracha before we study Torah, in a way, it's saying that we consider Torah study so important and so delightful that we enjoy it so much that we want to thank God for commanding us to do it. So it has more to do with at least according to one of the later commentators on this particular issue, says that that's the reason why it was such a heinous crime that they committed, because they basically, by not saying it, they were saying, well, we really don't enjoy doing this that much, and we don't get that much out of it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So just an interesting observation. I just thought I would share that with you. So there is, of course, a bracha that follows, or a prayer that follows that bracha, that asks God that the study of Torah should be a delight to us, that it should be something that we find very appetizing. So that is my prayer, believe me, that we do. I'm going to start the screen share.
What is that bracha?
The bracha, of course, is the one that we say at the very beginning, La'asok b'divrei Torah.
Yeah, but the next one you were talking about.
V'harevna, it's not, may you make pleasant for us, and in our mouths and in the mouths of all our descendants and the descendants of your people, the words of your Torah. So here we are in Parshat Korach, cousin Korach. So obviously we're already into the issue. Korach, of course, is a cousin of Moses, and we've discussed the fact that he is essentially mounting a mutiny against Moses. Not that Moses doesn't have enough troubles as it is, so he's got this one as well. And also from the tribe of Reuben and Dathan and Abiram. They were not Levites. Korach, of course, was a Levite, but it turned out that the tribe of Reuben was camped right next to that particular family. So now what's happening here, as we catch it again, is that Moses is asking Dathan and Abiram to come and talk about this, to discuss what their concerns are and trying to reach out to them to see if he can resolve what's bothering them. So we did this, we actually stopped here, but I think just to bring us back into context a little more, I went back a couple of verses. Vayishlach Moshe likro leDatan uLaAbiram bnei Eliav. Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliav. Vayomru, and they said, Lo na'aleh, We will not come up. So in a seminar that I'm actually attending, we're discussing this particular issue of, how to engage in polite debate, and was there anything, here's Moses trying to reach out, but does it sound a little bit like, since he's sending for them, that it's almost like a summons, and that there might be some reason as to why they wouldn't want to come, because it would sound like they were submitting, and the last thing in the world, as you'll see, is that they wanted to submit to the idea that Moses had authority. But nevertheless, it's interestingly ambivalent, and in terms of, was Moses 100% right here? And in fact, we are going to see some solutions as we go through this that don't solve the problem. So, but he does try at least to reach out to them, to talk to them. So let's see, there's Rashi, where they say lo naleh, and I'm going to, hold on 1 second, please. Just make sure you're muted, please. So unless you, of course, have a question, and in which case, please use the the reaction button to raise your hand, and that way I'll get to see it right away. So they said, Lo nale, we won't come up, we won't come up. And Rashi points out that has interesting, right? So Vayishlach Moshe, Moses sent, and from Tractate Sanhedrin in the Talmud it says, Mikan, from this, she'ein machzikin b'machloket, that one doesn't try to, I'll use, speak metaphorically here, pour gasoline on a dispute. So literally it means you don't try to strengthen or be, tough when it comes to a dispute. Shahaya Moshe, because Moses, it says, Machazer Acharehem, that he went after them, he tried to go after them, he followed them, Lahash Limam Bedivrei Shalom, to try and get this worked out, to speak to create a situation of peace with words of peace. In other words, that he was trying in some ways or another to reach out to them, whether the text itself supports the idea that we were saying before, that nevertheless there was some sense in which he was summoning them. And they say, Lo nale, we're not going to come up. Pihem hichshilam, so it says literally their mouths tripped them up. She'en lahem ela yirida, because in fact they didn't go up. All they had was going down, and of course we know what happened in that regard. The earth opening up its mouth, which we'll read about later. So they didn't realize that by saying that they were actually entrapping themselves. So this is what Dathan and Abiram respond. This is their response to Moses. By the way, of course, look at what's happening here, right? This is what they say, isn't it enough that you took us out, you brought us out from a land flowing with milk and honey? And what land are they referring to? Egypt. And it's so interesting that this is an incredible example of how people revise history to suit their emotional state. And we see history being revised here. Egypt, yeah, the first thing you think of Egypt, right, is that it's a land flowing with milk and honey. Of course, what were they doing there, right? They were suffering terribly and they were enslaved. But here they are saying to them, like, just trying to make, revising the facts, quote, so as to support their own argument and their own position. And this is the Torah, just so giving us an example of human behavior. Lauren.
Well, I mean, I've always wondered if calling Israel the land of milk and honey was doing that same thing. Because yes, some of the best honey I've ever had has been from Israel.
Yeah.
But milk? A land flowing with milk? I mean, did they mean like maybe goat's milk or something that because Israel's not known for its dairy products.
Don't speak to the Tnuva people about that. I don't take it.
Yes, there is milk processed in Israel, and there's cheese, and
I'm teasing you, Lauren. I really think it's more of a metaphor. In other words, milk meaning that it sustains you, that it's a place where you get nurtured, and honey being a place that's something that's pleasurable. By the way, that it's sweet. And I see it more as in other words, just a lovely place. It's a metaphoric way to describe a place that is extremely, both sustaining and pleasant to live in. And
so maybe it was perspective that their life in Egypt felt more pleasant to them than their life in the desert. And that's it. They weren't being disingenuous or misremembering, but it was just a matter of perspective.
Yes. Okay. So of course, I'm very happy that you're giving Dathan and Abiram a vigorous defense. Okay. Yeah. Let me finish this, because that while that is revisionist, look at the interpretation, because look at the position of where Korach comes. Korach comes right after Shlach Lecha, and Shlach Lecha is about how now they're condemned to die in the wilderness as a result of their faithlessness, right? So they go on to say, Lahami Tenu, to cause us to die, Bamidbar, in the wilderness. Right, but that's a partial truth. Okay, there's a reason why they're doing that, right? It's because they didn't want to go into the land of Israel. They didn't want to do it. But so this is the consequence, and so now they're focusing simply on the consequence. And even if we accept what you're saying, Lauren, that by comparison, the bitter enslavement in Egypt, where they were killing the boy babies, and they had taskmasters, and they were treated very cruelly, compared to life in the desert, was better. Let's even accept that argument. And of course, here they are going to die off in the wilderness. They've been told that's what's going to happen to the generation that was 20 years and older, that got counted, and mustered essentially to go into the land of Canaan. But they didn't want to. And not only that, when they were told, they then rebelled again. So, there's reasons for this. So again, partial truth. All right. So they're saying, isn't it enough that you did that? Ki tistarer aleinu gam histarer. That you want to control us, essentially it means. That you assume authority over us. So not only have you treated us so badly, but here you are trying to control us, trying to have authority over us. Again, I see such human behavior in this. And Lauren, believe me, I'm open if you would like to add anything, given this whole sentence here. Okay, just feel free, of course, right? Let's go on and see where we are. Okay, so this is where we actually pick this up. Af lo el eretz zavat chalav hevi altanu. Not only have you not brought us to a land flowing of milk and honey, vatiten lanu nachalat sadeh v'charim, and given us, not only have you not done that, but you haven't given us this inheritance of a field and vineyards. So so this is an example of biblical euphemism, and Rashi's going to explain that. So literally it means, should the eyes of those people, hanashim hahem, tinaker, be gouged out, lo na'aleh, we will not go up. But when they say those people, that's the euphemism. They're talking about themselves. Even if our eyes were to be gouged out, we wouldn't come up to discuss this with you, right? We aren't going to go up with you. Rashi's going to explain that here. Okay. All right. Let's go back. Thanks. I saw the chat. It's very nice. Okay. Vatiten lanu, right? And give us. Rashi. Hadavar musav alo ha'amur lamala. So he's saying this what's coming now is also contingent on that you haven't that was said above, right? Klomar, that is to say, lo hevi'otanu, you haven't brought us. V'lo natata lana nachalat sadeh b'cherem. Not only you haven't brought us, you didn't fulfill that part of it, but you haven't given us a portion of a field and a vineyard. Amarta lanu, that you talked to us about. And he says, this is what was said, remember back in Exodus 3, I will bring you up from the poverty of Egypt, El Eretz Tova, to a good land, the Gomer, etc. Misham, Tanu, from there you brought us out, Velo El Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash Hevi Otanu, but you didn't bring us to a land flowing of milk and honey. Ela gazarta alenu, but instead you decreed over us, lahamitenu bamidbar, that we should die off in the wilderness. Sha'amarta lanu, as you said to us, all quoting you, Moses, in Numbers chapter 14, bamidbar hazeh yiplu pigrechem. In this wilderness, your corpses will fall. So it's really marvelous how the Torah is set up in this way, that Parshat Korach follows Parshat Shlach Lecha and connects the two together, that this mutiny occurs right now. Again, people don't like being corrected. And they, instead of asking themselves, wait a second, what did I do wrong to deserve this? They'd rather just be angry over the fact that they have to face consequences of their own behavior. So, literally he's going to give us, right? Were the eyes of those people gouged out, etc. Afilu ata sholeach lenaker et einenu. So Rashi's telling us how we're to understand this. Even if you were to send to gouge out our eyes, im lo na'aleh elecha, were we not, if we don't come up to you, lo na'aleh, we are not going to come. We absolutely, adamantly refuse to come and talk to you about this. You know, you're this big cheat, Moses, right? And now Rashi goes in, ha'anashim hahem, those people. Ka'adam, he explains, like a person, hatole kilalato, who hangs his curse, b'chavero, on his neighbor, on his associate. In other words, instead of talking about himself in this regard, he puts it on his neighbor. And we know the object of euphemism. And that's, by the way, this is not the first example. One of the earlier examples that gets mistranslated so often is where Pharaoh talks about, the Israelites multiplying so much and leaving. And he's not talking about the Israelites leaving. Basically, the way he says it, if we understand this particular figure of speech of Hebrew, it means and drive us out, which obviously makes much more sense that that's Pharaoh's concern, that they'll get they'll multiply so much. By the way, which is again, another issue that hasn't changed, right? We see this coming up nowadays in American society, the replacement theory. I won't go into more details on that. I'm assuming you are familiar with that. It's awful, just how you don't learn from the past, you're condemned to repeat the mistakes. And it's sad. It's such a sad commentary on human nature. Vayichar leMoshe ma'od. It says Moses was extremely distressed. Vayomer el Hashem, and he turns to Hashem. He says, Al tefen en milchatam. Do not turn to their gift or their mincha, their offering. Lo chamor echad mehem nasati. I never used one donkey of theirs. V'lo hareoti et echad mehem, and I never acted with malice to one of them. So here we go. V'yichar leMoshe ma'od. It could have meant, the reason why Rashi is commenting on this, because sometimes the word charon means anger. And he says, nitzta er ad le'ma'od. So Rashi comments, it says, it wasn't that he was angry, it was that he was extremely distressed. He was very distressed. And he says to God, al tefen el minchatam, please do not turn don't accept their gift. Lefi pshuto, according to the simple meaning of the sentence, haktoret shehem makrivim lefanecha. He's referring to the incense offering that they would come and offer before God. Machar, on the next day. Al tafein alehem, do not accept this offering. So here it's just simply saying, don't accept the offering. Of course, the consequences, as we'll find out, are actually disastrous, but it isn't necessarily that Moses is saying that. Okay, just simply saying, don't accept it. In other words, as an act of appeasement. Umidrasho, and speaking more poetically about this, right? Amar, yeah, Golda, I'll stop. Golda?
Okay. I have a problem, and I don't know if Rashi had the same problem, but I don't remember it.
Okay.
Dathan and Abihu,
Yes.
they have two fathers. They
That-
have Eliav is one father, but each of it's marked as first. It's marked as is from Reuben, but
Yes.
he's also could be from Zebulun.
Really?
Yes,
Huh.
1:9 and 2:7.
You mean
Numbers 1:9 and 2:7. So
interesting.
I was looking it up and I go, wait a minute. I've seen that name somewhere
Okay,
before.
no problem. Let me explain. No problem. Okay, thank you. I was not aware of it. I didn't catch it, and I'm so glad you did. So was Zebulun, the question that I would have is, was the tribe of Zebulun associated with the tribe of Reuben?
You mean in the
When they
where they're
counted them?
standing around the
Right, exactly. Remember, because they talk about
wait a minute, I've got that. Wait, where'd I
so
put
that
that?
would be
I put that somewhere.
without going back to that particular, I'd have to go take my Bible and
No, I actually wrote it out, but I gotta find the page I stuck it on.
okay.
There it is. I see it. I see it.
Zebulon, okay, if Zebulon is associated with Reuben, then the Torah it's fine. It's simply,
Yeah.
then that's not a problem, because the three tribes that were, the two tribes that are associated with the tribe of Reuben sort of come under the general heading. So I think it's Reuben,
Okay.
Shimon, and what's the
I-
third one?
Gotta find it. I don't think so. I put that whole thing. Where did I put that? Oh, here it is. The encampment. Reuven
Mhm.
is south with
I'm
Simeon and
confused.
Gad, and
So it's
Zebulun
is with Judah. Let's go early. It's Issachar and Zebulon.
yeah, right.
Zebulon are the traders. So that is interesting. I'll have to go back. I don't want to do it right this second.
No, I just
I'll have to
I
go-
don't, if Rashi didn't have a problem with it, but I have a problem.
We have, of course.
Okay.
No, we have to
'Cause-
go back and look at those
And
genealogies.
yeah, and
I'll
which
tell you
way
what, yeah.
is it worse? I guess I don't.
Well, but the argument that they're from Reuben is the fact that that particular this family of Kahat, because both Moses and Korach were
Right.
children of Kahat, and that tribe was again south, and so was Reuben south.
Right.
So the idea,
But Moshe himself is east, and so is Judah and Zebulun.
correct. So I
So
need
either
to
way.
go back. That's a really interesting, very problematic issue. If what you're
Yeah.
saying is right, would you please send in the chat those references?
I can, absolutely. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Look, thank you for raising that. Let's see if I can remember tomorrow to bring it up. Okay. All right. So we're just now discussing this statement that where Moses is saying, "Do not accept their offering," right? And on the one hand, on the simple level, meaning the one that's going to come up tomorrow, but there's another interpretation. Amar, he said, Moses, Yodea ani, I'm aware, sheyesh lahem chelek b'tamidei tzibur. He says, I'm aware that because all the Israelites have a portion in the daily offering, right? In the lamb that's brought in the morning and the lamb that's brought in the afternoon. And those are public offerings where every Israelite has, contributes towards the funds for this offering, and consequently also gains a benefit. And I assume it has some kind of atonement value. So he says, Af chelkam lo yikubal lefanecha leratzon. He says, may the little portion they've got in this tamid, may it not be accepted before you favorably. Tanichenu ha'esh velo tochlenu. May that part of the tamid be left alone by the fire and not consume it, which is interesting, sort of very interesting description, that the idea that by being consumed in the fire, that is saying that God is accepting this. And of course, ultimately, the symbolism is that of a meal, that if you offer somebody something to eat and they don't consume it, what does that mean, right? What's that telling you? So there's something very deeply symbolic about sharing a meal with people, and they're ingesting the meal and taking it. It's something that I only found out once I started to cook myself, how personal it is when you prepare a meal for people and they share it with you. Going on. Lo chamor echad mehem nasati. I did not take one donkey of theirs. Lo chamoro shel echad mehem natalti. I didn't, literally nasati means to carry, right? But here it means not a donkey of one of them did I take. Afilu, even in the case, and this is citing the Tanchuma, that Midrash on the 5 books of Moses, Keshehalachti mimidyan lemitzrayim, when I went from Midian to Egypt, vehirkavti et ishti, and I put my wife on the donkey, right? Ve'et banai, and my sons, al hachamor, on the donkey, and I had the right to take that donkey from theirs. Now, that, of course, raised a question. And I thought to myself, well, remember Moses' position in Egypt at the time, that he came from the Egyptian royal house and had, this is at least my understanding. There may be commentators that explain it in a different way, but at least this is my understanding. Lauren, I don't know if you have anything from Art Scroll that explains it in a different way, but that would have given him the right to take the donkey. Lo natalti ela mishali. I only took my own. So here we go. V'tirgem Onkelos, and Onkelos translated it shacharit, right? He uses the word shacharit, lashon arami. He says this is Aramaic. Kach nikret. So when it says shacharit, it means to take by way of a levy, like when the government or the king would appropriate something, that ultimately there's this legal understanding that everything we own ultimately is actually, we only own it because the country in which we live, the government, the authority in which we live allows us the use of it. So Rashi seems to support what I was suggesting. He says that word shacharit, to appropriate. Kach nikret angaria shel melech. That is the word that is used to describe a sovereign levy, a levy on the part of a king. Shachvar, right? That's what it's called. And I think this is a good place for us to stop today. So we'll go back here, and that's where we'll pick it up. So things are heating up.
So Golda found that she put in the chat a couple of places where Eliab is Reuven or is Zebulun. So
Yeah, I mean, the other way we could go, which isn't, it's helpful to a point is it someone else called Eliav? Is it the only person?
Yeah, and then there's somebody later too. I kind of looked that up, but
it could be.
that's not the point. The point is, if we're gonna have two, what the heck,
Yeah, but
But then Torah should have gone back one more, maybe?
I'm not sure.
Let us know who Eliav's father was, because they each have a different father.
I thought Eliav is Ben Chelon. I thought Eliav is one of the chieftains, but that could be a different.
Yeah, no, each one of them is a
That's the
son
one.
of a
I think
chieftain. That's the problem.
I think that's the one from Zebulon. Okay, it could be a different Eliav. So it's simply a different Eliav.
Right.
But wait a second. It's not Eliav. It's Dathan and Abiram.
Who are the sons of Eliav.
Right. And Eliav is a descendant of Reuben, apparently. So,
according to my whatever, but they've kind of like totally forgotten about the fact that before we got to this point, because in 1 and 2, we have that name, but it's a descendant of Zebulun.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, and we haven't gotten to the part in 26 yet.
Right, and it doesn't talk about. So you're saying it doesn't tell you Eliav's father, which might have the whole thing. Yeah, I understand. So let me leave the session on the recording on that question, and we'll give it a cliffhanger. Okay.
It's all about. I need a question that Rashi hasn't answered.
There we go.
Just need one.
It's your day.